Hello, and welcome to the 2020 Bronx Book Festival. We are so thrilled to have you join us. You are listening to A Kid's Hero Journey. I'm excited to introduce our moderator, Ellen O. Ellen is the founder of We Need Diverse Books, a nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing diversity in children's literature. She is the author of the middle grade novels, The Dragon Egg Princess, The Spirit Hunters, Book 1 and Book 2, Island of the Monsters, and the YA fantasy trilogy, The Prophecy series. She's the editor of WNDB's middle grade anthology, Flying Lessons and Other Stories, and the YA anthology, 1,000 Beginnings and Endings. Originally from New York City, Ellen lives in Bethesda, Maryland, with her husband and 3 children, and has yet to satisfy her quest for a decent bagel. Ellen, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Olivia. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Kids Hero Journey. I am so excited to have this wonderful panel. Just great books all over here. And we are going to start right now with Katie, who's going to introduce herself and talk about her book. Hi, Katie. Where are you calling in from?
So I'm actually in Brooklyn right now, but I'll be moving back to my family's place in Michigan this weekend. So everything's kind of all over the place, but I'm really excited that I was able to be here and talk about myself and my books and my writing with everybody. So I am the author of The Dragon Warrior, and the sequel is called The Fallen Hero, and it comes out this October 13th. So this is my debut series, I guess. And these books came out from Bloomsbury, and they follow the journey of this 12-year-old warrior girl who's Chinese. And she basically has to fight her way across Chinatown, sort of like a quest story like Percy Jackson, but with Chinese mythology. And I also have a young adult thriller novel that's coming out with Bloomsbury later. The beginning of next year. So that'll be another book that people can look forward to.
Wonderful. So excited about it. Now, Claribel, can you tell us about your awesome book?
Sure. So my name is Claribel A. Ortega, and my book is called Ghost Squad, and it just came out April 7th, so pretty new. And it's the story of Lucely Luna, who accidentally awakens some malicious spirits, along with her best friend Sid, when they read a curse in a graveyard, which I don't recommend anyone do. And then they have to send those spirits back into the underworld before the full moon on Halloween, and they get some help from Sid's grandmother Babette, who's a witch, and a fat cat named Chunk. And it's based on Dominican folklore, which says that fireflies are actually the spirits of our loved ones watching over us. So Lucely lives in this haunted house that's haunted by her ancestors, who are basically ghosts that go in between ghosts and firefly form, and they are part of the adventure, and she has to save them and her town.
Awesome. This book sounds so amazing. Tracey, tell us about Jumbies.
All right. First of all, don't read these at night. So this is The Jumbie God's Revenge, which is the 3rd book in the Jumbie series. So here's the first one is The Jumbies, and the second one is Rise of the Jumbies, and this is the 3rd one. And in this one, the worst possible Jumbie has come out. Huracan, who is an indigenous god for the Carib people, who are the indigenous people of Trinidad and Tobago. He has decided that he has had enough with all of the Jumbies, and he is going to blow the island to smithereens, because, of course, what does Huracan sound like? Hurricane, right? Yes. Okay. So I have written a bunch of other books like Minecraft, and actually they're like all there on my shelf, like all of the various books that I've written. And I want to say, Katie, I think that you and I might have the same cover illustrator, Vivian Toe.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I know. I recognize her style anywhere. And Claribel, I have a friend who had a dog named Chunk. That you've got a cat named Chunk, he won't feel so bad about his dog.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Chunk is really famous too.
I know. He's all over Twitter. Okay, so Adam, last but not least, please tell us all about your wonderful series.
Thank you very much. So I'm Adam Gidwitz. I'm author of books like A Tale Dark and Grim and The Inquisitor's Tale. But I'm also the author of a new series called The Unicorn Rescue Society. So this is the first book in the series. And the 5th book just came out, and I would totally be showing it to you, except I have never seen it because I was in quarantine as soon as it came out, and I couldn't see it. So you should totally get the book before I do, and you'll be able to like tell your friends, like, I got this book so soon the author hasn't even seen it yet. So but this is the first book in the Unicorn Rescue Society. The series is about 2 kids, Uchenna and Elliot, and they travel around the world rescuing mythical creatures from danger. And each book I co-write with authors from the place that they visit. So this book, the 5th book that I'm talking about today, is called The Madre de Aguas of Cuba. And it's co-written with Emma Ortega, who is a Cuban-American author. And she would be here today, but she had a baby like 3 days ago. So unfortunately, Emma can't be with us, but we are very excited for Emma and her baby. And I'm very excited for The Madre de Aguas of Cuba, the 5th book in the Unicorn Rescue Society series.
Yay! Oh my God, these books are so amazing. I mean, I am so excited to be on a panel with all of you. I'm just going to do a really quick shout out for my own book called Dragon Egg Princess, which is all about a boy who has no magic in a world that's filled with magic. And he has to, of course, save the world with the help of a lost princess and other magical creatures. And then I go, dun, 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 because, you know, it's all about saving the world. Although lately, that seems very relevant. But anyway, I want to start right off because I know we don't have a lot of time and have so many questions for you guys. So I am going to actually start out with Katie. Okay, so like your story like is so brilliant because not only are your characters kind of hitting Chinatowns across the U.S., but they're looking for home. And so there's a very like real meaning of home in your book. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer this question, I actually sort of have to tell like my own personal story. So when I was younger, my parents would take my siblings and me to like different places across the US. And every time we would go to somewhere new, we kind of like to try to see if we could find a Chinatown. So I've been to San Francisco's Chinatown. I've been to Manhattan's Chinatown, just like all sorts of Chinatowns across the US. And so when I was thinking about, you know, wanting to write a middle grade adventure series, I thought, how cool would it be if I could have, you know, a child protagonist the way that I was a child growing up, who's sort of looking for her own home across Chinatowns, but with magic. So a lot cooler than my life. But yeah, I mean, you could say it's a literal search for home because the main character, Farron, and her little brother are traveling across the U.S. To hit all these Chinatowns, and each one is like a destination that they have to go and, you know, do something in order to finish this quest. But it's also a search for home in the sense of them trying to find their place in the world, which I think is something that a lot of diaspora readers and writers feel very deeply. I know I felt that growing up, Chinese American, and always just sort of wondering, you know, where do I fit in this society? I always felt like I was straddling 2 cultures. And so that was something that I really wanted to infuse in the story. And so it's not only just a story of, you know, going to these different Chinatowns and these different locations to find like those homes, but it's also a search for home in the sense of trying to find one place in the world.
Oh, that's so important. Oh, thank you. Okay, now moving on. Claribel, you included a lot of nostalgia in Ghost Squad. And I was really curious as to why it was important for you to do that, like Goonies, for example.
Right. So I grew up loving all those movies like, you know, the Goonies and Adventures in Babysitting, but I never really saw kids that looked the way that I did on those adventures. And I grew up in the South Bronx. So for me, riding my bike anywhere was like a fantasy. I was like, well, I get to go somewhere that's like not right across the street where my mom can see me. So I really loved those things. And even today, sort of the media that I watch that has kids having adventures, being on bikes, it's usually don't get to see a lot of brown and black girls being part of the main cast or like the story. And I really wanted to sort of pay homage to those things that I loved as a kid and write kids that look like me into the story, so that, you know, those brown and black kids can also go on these adventures on bikes and ride around town and like battle these evil monsters. I thought that was really important, and it was sort of like wish fulfillment for little me as well. So that's why I included it. Also, like, it was a great way for me to name the cat Chunk, to have all the cats named after one of the Goonies. That was important. So yeah.
I love the Goonies too. That's so funny. Okay. All right, I am moving along with all these questions. Like I said, I have a lot of questions for you guys. Tracey, why did you choose to do a remake of a Caribbean fairy tale?
Oh, well, that's an easy one. Actually, my kids grew up here. I was born and raised in Trinidad, but my kids grew up here in New Jersey and did not know anything about Jumbies the way that I knew about Jumbies. Like, people talked about Jumbies like they could be literally anybody. Like the post, the mail carrier bringing the post, the bus driver, the math teacher, could be anybody. And so as a kid growing up in Trinidad, you kind of have to like be aware, and like there are all of these different things that you have to do to protect yourself. Like, for example, if you're coming in at night, after dark, you have to like turn your back and like walk into your house backwards so that the Jumbies don't follow you. And if you hear your name called at night, you can't just like go out and see who's calling you, and you can't just like answer, because that means like a Jumbie can like grab you and take you. So you have to say things like, did someone call me, and wait for the answer, because the Jumbies can't like respond to that. And that's like ways to keep yourself safe. And that was like part of my regular life growing up. It was like scary and awesome. Like, I loved it. It was so great. But my kids didn't grow up with that. So I wanted to bring Jumbies to them in New Jersey. And so I started writing the story and based it on, you know, like a Cinderella format, because that was like my favorite fairy tale growing up. And yeah, they read the first one and none of the others.
How dare they? Oh my God.
No, seriously, one of my kids has not read any of my books, so like it's just it just happens.
Like, I was talking to, who was it? Who writes Goosebumps? I forget his name.
R.L. Stein?
Yeah, that's right. R.L. Stein. I was talking to him, and he said that his son has read
R.L. Stein. Just talking to
none. I was like, oh, okay, now I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, but like,
shocked.
Like hundreds of books. So I mean, you know. Well, actually, my kids read all his books. So
yeah, I read all his books.
His own child won't read them, which makes me feel okay about the fact that my children have only read one of the books in the Jumbie. At least they read one in the series. They've read other books of mine, but only one in that series.
Yeah, I know. One day, maybe if I actually can do a visual book, they'll read them, right?
Yeah, you gotta write a graphic novel.
Exactly. One day. All right, Adam, I got a question for you. The Unicorn Rescue Society isn't about unicorns. It's about other mythical creatures. How did you choose these creatures for each book?
Yeah, good question. Well, first of all, I got to say, like, a couple things. Can I just preface this by saying I have been on 10 years ago when I first started writing, when like my first book was first coming out, like Claribel's, yours is just coming out, I was on a hero panel, and I have to say, I'm going to admit it right now, it was a panel of all white dudes. And this panel is so much cooler and so much better. And that's in large part because of the work that Ellen has done, that Tracey has done. I know Katie and Claribel, you've been doing the work and you're going to be doing it even more, but like the leadership that some of you guys have shown on that issue has made this panel what it is. And I think it's so powerful, and I'm so honored to be on it. I also think it's so good as part of the Bronx's Reading Book Festival. So I spend some time at a school in the Bronx every year, and those are some of the most creative, some of the best stories I ever see come out of the Bronx. So we need opportunities for kids who don't all look like me, though kids look like me in the Bronx too, to be on panels like this and publishing their own books, because those are where the best stories are going to come from. So I just had to say. So what was the question? Oh yeah, why aren't there any unicorns in these books? The way that I choose the creatures for the books is, what I do is I reach out to authors that I really admire, and I say, would you be interested in writing a book with me? So the first book I wrote on my own to get the series started, but after that I started reaching out to people that I admired, people like Joseph Bruchac, who's a Native American author, and I said, Joe, what creature from Native American mythology would you like to write about? And he said Sasquatch. So we wrote about Uchenna and Elliot going to the Muckleshoot Nation in Pacific Northwest, and rescuing Sasquatch, Bigfoot. Or I reached out to David Bowles, an amazing Mexican-American author, and I said, what creature would you want to write about? And he was like, chupacabras, obviously. And I was like, amazing, let's do that. So we wrote that book, and then for this book, I reached out to Emma Ortega, and I said, your family's from Cuba, I really love your books. Would you want to write one of these? And what would you want to write about? And she said the Madre de Aguas, which is cool because, so the Madre de Aguas in Cuba, it translates as the mother of waters, and is this, in Cuba, it's like a serpent creature that can be very little or very big, and it is sort of often associated with Oshun, which is a Yoruba god, or goddess, but also with Mary, a Catholic god. In Cuba, there's a lot of cultures that are sort of layered on top of each other in a fascinating way that Emma really wanted to explore, and I got to explore it with her. But it also relates to a book that Tracey wrote, because the Madre de Aguas in Trinidad has a different name, right? So I could throw it to Tracey as soon as she unmutes. I have to say one last thing about that, and then I'm gonna throw it back to you guys, which is I was in an interview the other day, and they said, that sounds so cool. Has any author ever said, you know, that sounds great, but I just don't have time right now? And I was like, uh-oh. I did one day, or maybe the first author I ever asked was Tracey Baptiste if she would ever be willing to write a book. She was like, that sounds great, Adam. No, and she was actually very helpful. She helped me create Uchenna. We talked a lot about it in the early days. Right? Yeah, I called you out.
He just called you out, Tracey.
Called out.
I'm waiting whenever you're ready.
That was incredible.
I got to write these Jumbie's book. I need more Jumbie's books, so you write those. Anyway, Madre de Aguas, Mel Blanc, right? Is that right?
Yeah, it's Mama Chalo. Yeah, she's the main villain on the second Jumbie's book, Rise of the Jumbies. Yeah, so I was thrilled that Emma was taking on this creature, because there are, within Caribbean mythology, especially since it was brought over by people who were enslaved, there's like a whole bunch of these mixtures of all of these different kinds of creatures. And as you say, there are very layered stories, like stories layered on top of stories. So it's really, really interesting, and I love it. And there's like so much to explore.
Yeah.
So can I say that Madre de Aguas sounds scary to me? But when I first heard of Tracey's book, The Jumbies, I was like, oh, the Jumbies, they're probably cute little things. I mean, I totally am excited about this book. And I read it, and I was like, this book is so freaking scary. So, okay. All right, guys, I got to get through these questions. We are already 18 minutes in. All right. This is a serious question. Why do you guys think stories about heroes are so popular? Start with Katie.
That's a really good question. I mean, I feel like heroes just have this incredible ability to achieve something that, we might not necessarily be able to in real life. Like, I can't go off on an actual quest with dragons through Chinatown and save the world. But
you want to. We all want to.
I want to, but I could go on a quest to maybe find like the best soup dumpling place. But that's about it. But
that is a great quest.
I think stories with heroes foster the sense of optimism within readers, and I think that's something that we need a lot right now, certainly. But just in general too. I think by reading a lot, I read like Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, all these like middle grade quest adventure stories growing up, or even outside of middle grade. I always felt like I was drawn towards stories with heroes who are fighting for a greater cause, and often they achieve whatever goal that they have. And I think that it just instilled such like a positive outlook for me in my own life. And I think kids just love reading stories about optimism and, seeing stories where the good guy does win all the time. That's not necessarily something that we see all the time in the real world.
What about like culturally too? Guys, just jump on in. Let's talk also about heroes culturally. And
for sure. I mean, I think, Adam, already brought it up about the fact that a lot of the stories that we have seen, the stories that we grew up with, were very white. And we didn't see ourselves in these stories. And while we were reading all of these great books and we were seeing ourselves in these characters and doing all of the things and fighting the dragons and jumping cliffs and all of that stuff, we weren't really seeing people who looked just like us. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. But now kids have really just such a wide range, all kinds of characters from Asian cultures. I'm thinking about like Sayantani Dasgupta's books. There's, like from all over the place, from the Caribbean, from Africa, for different, like various countries in Africa. There's like no end of it. The Akata Witch series by Nadia Korafor. There's so many books now, and it's so great. And it's because, as a kid, you're the hero. Of course you're the hero. So yeah, here's my book. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's also obviously, especially right now, there can be a really big sense of helplessness in the world. And I think reading about heroes, and it makes you feel like, oh, somebody can save us. There's a possibility that, things can be okay. And when you're reading a book, you can sort of be the hero yourself. You can imagine yourself doing those things and making the world better. So you feel a little less helpless. You feel a little bit more like I can have an impact on the world because this character that I love has an impact on the world. And I think that's important. It's fostering hope, like Katie said. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and we absolutely need it.
Yeah. In some ways, reading about heroes is kind of like training ourselves, right? The heroes that we most love are usually not awesome, strong, super brave people at the beginning of the stories, right? And I think that there's kind of a misconception that when you finally see someone on the front of a newspaper, if they're a hero, you see them on the cover of a newspaper for a good reason, you're like, oh, well, they're something special and extraordinary. But they started exactly the way that you did. And I think that we need to train ourselves to think about how we are the heroes. As has been said before me, you're the ones that you've been waiting for, right? And so we have to use books. We read these books about heroes, I hope, as training to be the heroes that we're waiting for.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Okay, but every good hero has to also have a great villain. Let's talk about the villains in your books. Let's start with Claribel.
So I can't say exactly who's the villain in my book because it'll be a spoiler.
Uh-oh.
But I will say that, like Tracey's book, actually, the way that the hero manifests at the beginning is actually a hurricane, and it's actually a spirit hurricane. So it's a hurricane that's filled with all these malicious spirits that are raining down on St. Augustine. And first of all, my main character is used to living with ghosts. So now suddenly her perception of what a ghost is thrown off, right? Because the ghosts in her home are friendly. They're her ancestors. But now all of a sudden, these are evil, scary looking ghosts. And she's really worried about what that means for the ghosts that she loves, basically. Is this going to affect them? Are they going to turn scary? What happens to you when you die? All these existential questions that sort of came up when I was writing the book, and that I want kids to ask themselves. It's important. But yeah, the villain in my book, I guess, starts off as a spirit hurricane and then involves 2 times. So there are 2 twists. But I don't want to give it away. You guys have to read it to find out.
Next, Tracey.
So in my very first Jumbie's book, the main baddie is Severine, and she is the kind of Jumbie that's sort of in charge of all of the Jumbies. She's sort of Jumbie coordinator, but the land Jumbie coordinator, she's the management, right? And so she's the main baddie in the first Jumbie's book, and then in the second one, we meet the even worse Mama Zhao, and she's like in charge of all the water jumbies, all of the mermaids and things like that. Where things start to get really messy is that the land jumbies go in the water and the water jumbies go in the land, and then Huracan gets pissed off and he's like, I am not having it, and then all mayhem breaks loose, and it's not just Corinne's island that's like getting kicked up in the dust. It's all of the islands together that are now in trouble because of all of these different bad guys who've come out, and they're like, it's basically like a Jumbie carnival, right? They're all jumping up in steel band and doing all the wrong things, and Huracan's like, no, I will kill you all. The end.
So, Tracey, you're saying that your books just get horrifyingly more scary as each one passes, right?
Right.
Maybe that's why your kids wouldn't read the other one. They're scared.
Mommy's scaring me again.
Oh, come, children, let mommy terrify you.
Okay, Adam, tell us about your evil villain.
The evil villains in the Unicorn Rescue Society are these two billionaires named the Schmoke brothers, and they always have evil plans that involve capturing or endangering mythical creatures. So to give you just a little bit of what their plan is for the fifth book, the Madre de Aguas of Cuba, the Madre de Aguas in Cuba is connected to the fresh water source on the island, and so the Madre de Aguas goes missing, and there's a drought. And what we will learn is that the Schmoke brothers have captured the Madre de Aguas. They want to take it back to the Florida Everglades and start bottling water from it and selling it back to Cuba, because that's just kind of how they roll. So every one of these books, the Schmoke brothers are the bad guys, and Uchenna and Elliot always have to be brave enough to defeat them. And don't worry, they always are.
So you're telling us that you actually wrote the most realistic villains of all these books, right?
I wish that I could think of stuff as evil as, actual multinational. Anyway, I'm going to stop.
Okay, Katie, tell us about your villains.
Oh man. Okay, so I also can't say too much because it would be a massive spoiler to say who the ultimate villains in the story are, but I will say that it's definitely a plot twist in the story, and the villains are people who you don't see as the villains of the story, like through most of the story. But I would also say that throughout the Dragon Warrior and the Fallen Hero, there's definitely some like antagonism in the beginning that turns out to not be like the main villainy in the story, but it's basically just takes the form of bullying, which I think is something that kids experience a lot. I remember I wasn't like seriously bullied when I was younger, but I definitely remember like feeling out of place as being like one of the only Asian kids in my school, and feeling a little bit ostracized for that. And in the Dragon Warrior, Farron and her brother are sort of ostracized because of some things that their father did before them, and because of the fact that they're of mixed ancestry, so they don't have like 100% Chinese warrior blood. So then there's the question of them not quite belonging to the society, or like feeling like they don't quite belong. And it doesn't help that, other kids and other warriors in the society also sort of see them as different. And so throughout the beginning of the series, you sort of see that Farron and her brother are already facing opposition, just in the form of, not feeling like they belong. And I would say that's the main conflict throughout the series. It's just them figuring out, well, actually, we may not necessarily fit into this box, but we can make like our own box because we're different, but we're special in our own way. And it's up to them to sort of go along on this journey and then eventually meet other villains, which I guess I can't say anymore because but throughout that adventure, they sort of learn to conquer their inner demons.
Oh, I love that. I mean, inner demons, yeah. I mean, our own inner demons are our worst, right?
Yeah, so. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But I gotta be honest, listening to all of you talk about your villains and your conflict in the story actually makes me more hooked. But I think I'm that type of person. I like the bad stuff. I need to ask this question because I've been dying to ask it. All right. So your main character becomes a best friend with a famous heroic character. Who is it and why? For example, like in my books, I have this magicless boy and this dragon who turns human, and I see them as best friends with Aang and Katara from the last Airbender series, right? Because I feel like magic and bending, it's all kind of related, and it's also, they're kind of like in an Asian-based cultural world. So that's what I see as their best friends. What about you guys, Tracey?
Actually, I think that Corinne would probably be best friends with Kiran Mala, who is the main character in the Serpent Secrets series. And it's also because, you know, like growing up in Trinidad, you know, it's both South Asian and a lot of African culture. So my father is Indian, my mom is of African descent. And so like I see like you know, like a very familial interaction and bond between Corinne and Kiran Mala. Plus, they're both very similar personalities. Where just like they're like, okay, fine, I guess I gotta just do this thing myself. So I, you know, save the world alone. All right, fine, here we go. You know, they're both that kind of character.
That's awesome. Adam, next.
I think that Uchenna would be best friends with Han Solo from Star Wars because they're most similar. And Elliot would be best friends with C-3PO because they are also most similar.
This says a lot about your characters. I get that. Claribel.
I would say both Sid and Lucelli would be best friends with Eleven from Stranger Things. Both because she's used to fighting monsters like they are, and also because she's kind of a weirdo. And like Lucelli and Sid only have each other, like they have no other friends. And I feel like they would just be three outcasts being BFFs and riding around town killing monsters.
Adorable. All right, Katie, your turn.
Yeah, I think Farron would probably be best friends with Percy Jackson. I mean, they both undergo like this huge quest, and that quest is also somehow tied to a part of their identity. And they ultimately find power in being different. They find power in something that sort of, you know, made them seem like they were kind of weak in the beginning. And I think that's something that I really loved about the Percy Jackson series, you know, that I tried to channel in my books as well. I would also say Farron and Percy share like a similar sense of humor in the sense that they kind of like make jokes at the wrong times. But I think that's what makes middle grade like really fun. You can sort of throw in like a light-hearted joke in the middle of a serious moment, and it's just kind of, you know, a great way to lighten up the mood. And yeah, I think that's why they'd be good friends.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay, I think, do I have enough time for my questions, or do I move on to audience questions? I'm assuming I have to move on to audience questions. So yes. Okay. All right, guys. What books have made you excited as an author this year?
Do I have it? I literally just finished reading a book, and I thought I had it in here still, but I do not. Oh, no, I don't. It's called, it's actually YA, but it's called Escaping Exodus by Nikki Drayden, and it is a very high fantasy book. So if you are a middle grade audience, you know, if you're on the higher side of middle grade, maybe it would be okay for you. But if you like high fantasy, that's a really great book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's such an interesting and different take on like a post-apocalyptic world where people have to like go into space because we've destroyed the earth. I've never seen anything like it. And that is always something that's really exciting when somebody makes something new from a genre that has been around for a long time. I love that.
Anybody else?
I read To Kill a Kingdom this year, which is also young adult, and it's a Little Mermaid retelling where the Little Mermaid is like evil, and it is really good. It's very good. It's creepy. I love the audiobook. It was incredible, but it's a little scary. So just also middle grade readers. I don't think it's for you. Definitely YA.
You said Little Mermaid evil. I'm
Yeah,
so
evil.
Soman Shinani would also be really into that. Soman stuff. That's for him, right?
It's very good. It's very good.
Well, I'll give a shout out to a middle grade book because it's Min Lay's Green Lantern Legacy. And I want to mention that because, come on, Asian Green Lantern, yes.
I got a book I'm really excited about. I can't ever remember if it came out in 2020 or 2019, but whatever. A Wish in the Dark by Christina Soontornvat.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah.
And into what I loved about it was it takes place in sort of traditional Thailand, but with a kind of magic that I hadn't seen before. And that was just, it felt like a whole new world. And it's a great story. So highly recommend Wish of Dark, Christina Soontornvat.
I'm really based on Les Mis.
It's based on Les Mis. And yet it feels so different. But yes, it is. Yeah.
A retelling.
Can I shout out all the books in the Rick Riordan Presents imprint?
Yeah.
I think I've read every one that's come out so far, and I love them all. Like the Percy Jackson series, I don't know if you can tell or not, but that was one of my favorite series growing up. And I love all the action adventure and the humor. I think, Aru Shah, Sal and Gabby, I'm actually rereading that right now. Tristan Strong, these books have done so well to sort of have that humor and heart, but also talk about different mythologies from different cultures. And I feel like I've learned a lot, and I could keep reading books from that imprint forever.
I'm so happy that they did that line. I am just talk about being a true ally. I mean, really going out there to raise voices up, right? I love that. Okay, next question. Important. What are you currently working on? So I'm going to go in reverse order. Adam.
Well, in addition to, so I just finished drafting the 6th Unicorn Rescue Society book. So yeah, I get to just keep plugging the same series because, there's so many of them. And this one I wrote with an incredible author who many of you maybe know personally, Henna Khan. Yeah, she's so amazing. So she's Pakistani American, and we wrote a book. Our book is called The Secret of the Himalayas. And it's about a creature in the Himalayan mountains in Pakistan, but I can't tell you what it is because I'll just tell you, it has a horn on its head, and it lives in the mountains. Anyway, you're going to have to get the book to find out. The Secret of the Himalayas, and it comes out in next May, so a year from now.
I know, because I...
You think you know. You think you know, Ellen.
No, I know, because I talked to him. Unless she lied to me. I don't know.
Oh, you do know. Oh, my God.
Okay, Tracey.
So I'm actually working on a nonfiction book right now. We're in line edits, which means we're almost done. This has been an extremely, extremely long process. It is called When Africa Fueled the World, and it is about 10 people in African history, pre-colonial African history. So we're talking about way back in ancient times, all the way up through let's say the Renaissance period with people like Mansa Musa. It's pretty intense. The research for it was pretty intense. But now that I'm going through the line edits, I'm finding I'm really, every time I wanted to quit on this book so many times because it was so hard to write, doing the research and writing it was just so hard, and it took such a long time. But now that we're near the end, it's starting to look pretty good. I'm pretty happy about it.
Wow, that's amazing. Also, wow, you must have had a lot of fun researching that, though.
The research was fun sometimes, and also sometimes very frustrating. There's a lot of bias about African culture, especially pre-colonial African culture. There's the myth that Africans had nothing before European colonists came in, and as a matter of fact, Africa was basically funneling everything to the rest of the world. It's and everybody knew it. So
cool. I can't wait for that book to come out. That sounds awesome. Okay, Claribel.
So I have a middle grade graphic novel coming in 2022 called Frizzy, about a Dominican girl's curly hair journey from getting her hair straightened every Sunday to wanting to let her curls flourish. But that's a long way off. And then I'm also working on edits for a short story as part of this middle grade anthology called This Is Our Rainbow. And it is a magical realism story about a little girl who communicates for her family because none of them speak English through paper planes. And she ends up becoming friends with this drag queen who moves in across the street from her, and she's questioning sort of if it's okay for her to like girls or not, and she gets help from this new neighbor, and yeah, and then other stuff that I can't talk about, but maybe soon.
Oh, I love it. Oh, my heart just went, oh.
Yeah, it's really cute.
Awesome. Okay, Katie, what are you working on?
Yes, so I mentioned it briefly earlier, but I have a young adult coming out January 2021, and it's also with Bloomsbury, but it's totally separate from like middle grade fantasy. It's a contemporary thriller. And the pitch is One of Us is Lying meets Crazy Rich Asians, and yes, it follows the story of this friend group. There are 5 people in the friend group, and they attend this elite Manhattan prep school. They're the top students in their grade, the top 5 students, and they're Asian American students. And then one of them is murdered, and all the clues sort of point to like one of the 4 friends being, the perpetrator. And so the story just sort of follows along that path, and just to discover like what actually happened, what is the truth behind the murder. And throughout the story, we also sort of delve into a lot of things that I wanted to talk about that we don't really talk about among Asian Americans. A lot of it has to deal with like mental health, just being in this really competitive school environment where these kids from immigrant families are trying to do their best, and when do they go too far? And yeah, that's the gist of it.
Give it to me now.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it. I'm so excited.
Do you have a book you're working on?
Yes, actually, thank you. I was going to go to the next question, but I do have a middle grade book I'm working on right now. It's actually, it's based on the story that my mom told me ever since I was little about being a lost child during the Korean War. And I always thought it was kind of like not really real, like I don't know that I ever really believed this story because it had like this kind of impossible story ending to it until my aunt came from Korea, and they sat down and they kind of pieced together the story from their memories, and I realized, oh my gosh, it's a true story. And so I went and I started doing a lot of research. Tracey, I just fell into that research hole for like, you just go in for years, right? It feels like years. And I just found out so much history. I mean, the Korean War is called the Forgotten War because it really has been forgotten. People don't talk about it. And so this is kind of like my book to tell that story, to tell the story about my mom's experience as a child during the Korean War, and of all the Korean people who suffered terribly during that time. So that was a total downer. So I will move to the next question, which is, okay, guys, what was your favorite middle grade book of all time when you were young? For me, my favorite middle grade was A Wrinkle in Time. I'm just going to say it now. You can't take it. You have to. I'm kids, just kidding. Yeah, for me, right, A Wrinkle in Time, reading that when I was young, that was just like mind blown. This nerdy girl who's angry like me. I was always angry. but like, I could so relate to her.
Yeah.
So that
I'm going to go old school too with The Cat Wings, which is Ursula K. Le Guin.
Oh, wow,
it's actually like much younger. It's probably more of a chapter book than a middle grade novel. But I love The Cat Wings by Ursula K. Le Guin. So you can tell, like like my whole thing has been fantasy for quite some time.
I loved, my favorite was Matilda by Roald Dahl. I just, she was brilliant and her parents were stupid and all the adults, pretty much except for one, were mean and stupid. And she was so smart that she had to change everything with her brilliance. Yeah, I love Matilda. That's the best.
I feel like that's how my kids feel about me.
That's how all kids feel, right? It's so universal. You're like, I know, and none of them know.
That's right.
My favorite was definitely A House on Mango Street. I think I read it like a billion times as a kid. And I was like, oh, they speak Spanish at home with their parents. I love this.
Growing up was definitely the Harry Potter series. Like, I remember like my whole childhood, I basically just spent all my time rereading that series. And like, there was one point where my parents like came into the room and saw me reading whatever book for like the upteenth time. They're like, "You're reading that series again?" And I was like, "Yes." That series was what really got me to love fantasy.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Okay, well, I don't, am I out of time? Are we done? Can I ask one more question? Olivia, one more question? Yes? Okay. All right, guys, come on. We're doing a hero panel, so we got to ask this question. I know it's an old and over-asked question, but if you are a superhero, what would be your superpower? Katie?
Maybe the ability to read fast. Like after
what a nerd.
But because I spent so much time reading when I was younger. Like that was like the thing I did because I didn't have friends. So I would just go to the library and I would reread Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, Goosebumps, just like anything I could get my hands on. And like even now, like people will comment, like my friends will tell me like, "Oh, how did you finish that book already? I thought you just started it." And I'll be like, "Yeah, I mean, I started it earlier today." So I'm done with it now, obviously. But I remember being like the kid in middle school who like every day I had a new book. Like that was my thing. I was like the super fast reader.
Me too. Is that why I didn't have friends?
Wait, I was a super slow reader and I also didn't have friends. So that can be the reason.
Okay, what superpower, Adam?
You know, I've been asked this question many times in the past. I mean, it's a great party question, but I just had a new one come into my mind that I like so much that I may even incorporate it into a new book.
Ooh.
I would like the power, the superpower to convince people of the truth.
Ooh.
You know, there's like is it Loki who can like silver tongue or whatever and convince people of anything?
Yeah.
Maybe. But
Yeah.
I don't want that. I just want to be able to show them the truth, and that's all.
Like the opposite of a Cassandra, right? Like Cassandra tells the truth, but nobody believes her.
Yeah, the inverse.
Like a Cassandra that works.
Yes.
Awesome. I like it.
Do a lot of good.
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay, Claribel, what is your superpower?
I would love to be able to control time, like completely, like stop it, go forward in time, back, all of it. I think that would be amazing. And then I could help Katie to have more time to read because I could just stop time for her. And then it won't matter how long.
That's what friends are for.
Exactly.
Okay, Tracey.
I would like the power of teleportation because I have discovered that I like to be in a lot of places, but I don't like to travel to those places. I just want to be in Mexico. I just want to be on the French Riviera. I just want to be on the Gold Coast. Like, I don't want to have to get there. I just want to be there. So teleportation.
What about you, Ellen?
Oh, I would want to do invisibility because I love the idea of sneaking up on people and scaring them to death. But I realized that actually is not a superhero power. That's a supervillain power. But I think that says a lot about me too. So that's okay. But anyway, okay, guys, we are out of time. This has been an amazing panel. I had so much fun. I have realized how much I want to read all of your books again and again and again. They are fantastic. I hope everyone out there watching this panel runs and gets your books, especially before Adam gets his, so that they can taunt him and go, na, 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 na. But anyway, thank you guys so much for being on this panel. And thank you, Bronx is Reading, for this great panel on heroes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Bronx is Reading. Thank you, Ellen.
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much to Ellen, Katie, Tracy, Adam, and Claribel. And please, please, please support these authors. You can go to thebronxisreadingbooks.com and pre-order their books or purchase their already existing books. But you guys were so amazing. All of you, each one of you is such an inspiration. So thank you again for doing this.
Loved it so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.